Candy Montgomery. Now, some of you that are in this true crime community know exactly who I'm speaking about. Others are going to wonder, but hopefully, after this, you will know who she is and you will do your own research and answer the big question. And we'll get to that big question here in a minute. So, how did I stumble upon this was 30 something year old woman named Candy Montgomery from Wiley, Texas? Well, I watched a scripted series about Candy Montgomery on Netflix the last couple of days. She was accused of murdering one of her female friends with an axe. Again, in Wiley, Texas, in July 13th, 1980, if I'm not mistaken. It was actually on Friday the 13th, which the Friday 13th franchise just came out a couple weeks prior to that to the theaters, and also The Shining, where an axe is used. So, I mean, a lot of weird stuff happening in this case. So, I really enjoy watching a good documentary or scripted series and then researching it immediately. It's like it's just something that I really enjoy doing. Like looking, in this case, looking it up, even going to the area and seeing certain landmarks for some reason, and artifacts about the case. It just really strikes me and I enjoy it. But then that goes away. It only lasts, it's like a week or two, and then it usually goes away. And I'm like that with almost every case that I research. So, the crux of this case was that Candy Montgomery she sung in the church choir. She was a God-fearing, tight community, and she was married and had a couple kids. Very sociable, very outgoing. And at some point, she decided that her home life with her husband was not satisfactory enough, and she wanted adventure, which entailed her having an affair with somebody else within their circle named Alan Gore. And again, it was a tight knit community within, especially the church, from what I've researched and what I've watched. And Alan Gore was married to Betty Gore. And again, they go out as couples. Betty and Alan's child spends the night at Candy Montgomery and her husband's house. Just normal people from the outside. Again, you never know what's going on inside somebody's mind. But at some point after a volleyball game where they bump into each other, Alan and Candy decide to have an affair. It seems to me, from the research and the show, that Candy was the aggressor. And she had asked Alan, she's been having these thoughts that she would like to engage in an affair, which basically entailed sex. Let's be honest. That's what an affair, if you just are going out and having lunch together, calling each other on the phone, is that really an affair? To me, that's friendship. When you introduce sex into the mix, then that's an affair. And that's exactly what they were doing. And they would, it was kind of weird how they set things up in this affair. Like, they would talk about it. Okay, these are the things that are the pros and the cons. These are the things we can do. These are things we can't do. And they did that for a long time until they actually met at a hotel and had sex. And then they would meet, I guess it was every other week, is how they had it set up. And this lasted for almost a year. And then it ran its course, so to speak, according to both of them. And although they continued to do things as couples, there were some indications where they were getting close to being caught of having this affair. In the show, they actually detailed that Candy Montgomery's husband found a love letter, a love card of some sort that Alan had sent Candy, and he confronted her about it, and she admitted to the affair. It is unknown whether Alan's wife, Betty, knew about the affair. That brings us forward to, I believe it was July 13th. It could have been June 13th, 1980, when Candy Montgomery was doing her normal thing, going to church, participating in her child's activities and such. And Betty Gore's and Alan Gore's child wanted to spend the night at Candy Montgomery's residence with her husband and children. This was allowed, but she had swimming practice. So Candy left her church function and told everybody that she was leaving this church function to go to Betty Gore's house to pick up the child's swimsuit. And she went there. And now, this is only a one-sided story now, right? Before you have witnesses. Now, it's just Candy Montgomery's story, and that's it. Because two people entered that house, and only one walked out alive, and that was Candy Montgomery. But when Candy Montgomery went over there to get that swimsuit, something happened. And the following day, Betty Gore's body was found in a utility room with 41, not stab wounds, axe wounds. 41. That sounds like Lizzie Borden's story, doesn't it? Gave her dad 41 or something. That was the nursery rhyme back in the day. So initially, the crime scene is so bloody that neighbors think that she's been shot. The neighbors are the one who found the body. Alan Gore was out of town, which was red flag number one if I was investigating it. He leaves and goes out of town, and he starts trying to call her, and she's not answering. So he gets worried, and he calls his neighbors to go check. Hey, can you go check on Betty? She's not answering. She hasn't answered all day. The neighbors went, and that's when they discovered the body. Not only did they discover the body, though, they discovered their child, which was about 1 year old or something like that, crying in the crib. She had been in there all day. So police obviously start their investigation. They find some small, what they say, footprints in the utility room in the blood. They find a thumbprint on the freezer in the utility room in blood. A lot of blood in the shower, bathroom area. Fibers, hairs in the top part of the drain, as if somebody cleaned up. And they have a 3-foot axe laying beside the deceased body. No one suspects Candy Montgomery. She's a tiny little thing, pillar of her community, and she goes on about her day. Police obviously start interviewing the closest people to Betty Gore, and the first one being Alan Gore, who's out of town. He obviously has an alibi. They asked the appropriate questions. Conflict. Who would have it in for Betty? Now, apparently, Betty wasn't the nicest person. But again, I think you could say that just about with anybody. You'll always find somebody that loves a person, and you always find somebody that will have something negative to say about them. But she was a school teacher, and they couldn't figure out who would do this. They asked Alan if she had had an affair, and she had many years ago, but they didn't feel that that played into this. They asked if he had any affairs recently or had any affairs at all, and he stated that he did not. They interview Candy Montgomery because she reportedly was the last person there, and she was. She said, yes, I went over, I got the swimsuit, this and that, left, nothing unusual. And they really don't suspect her until Alan calls the police the next day and says, you know what, I lied to you. There's the second red flag. And notice both of these red flags revolve around the husband, Alan Gore. He's out of town. He has an alibi. So, hey, that red flag kind of gets canceled out. But here's a second one. He lied. Okay, but he's coming clean. So you have to give him, some credit for that. He tells them, I lied to you. I did have an affair. It's been over for 8 months, but I had an affair with a girl for about a year. They said, well, who's this girl? Candy Montgomery. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Wait a second. Candy Montgomery, she's the last person to have seen Betty Gore alive. This is how an investigation lines up. If you're lucky. If not, they become cold cases. This one did not. They go back to Candy Montgomery. Hey, you lied to us. You said that you didn't have an affair. Alan's telling us, yes, okay, I did have an affair. At this point, they're like, well, we need your fingerprints. Okay, and guess what? Her thumbprint matches up to the one in blood. Now, it's very important that that thumbprint is in blood. It's not just a regular thumbprint. She's been in that house many times, so she could explain that away. It's that it was in blood. You can't explain that away. Well, you could, but she had already painted herself into a corner. And how do I mean that you could explain that away? I walked in, I found the body, I freaked out, I put my hand on the freezer that was bloody, I left, but she had already painted herself into a corner, so she couldn't use that as an excuse. She hires an attorney, she tells her attorney, I did it. Nobody could believe it. This little girl, woman, Betty was bigger than her, 41 times. Her face was left almost unrecognizable. The whole right side caved in. Defensive wounds, axe wounds, 41. Candy tells her side of the story. Candy says, I went there to get the swimsuit, and out of the blue, when we were talking, she showed me her new puppy. She asked me if I was having an affair with Alan. I said no, but I did. She claims that Betty walked away out into the garage where the axe was, came back inside, and Candy's like, what are you doing? And everything calmed down for a minute. She put the axe down. Betty went and got a towel to wrap the swimsuit that Betty had gotten from the utility room area. Candy had gotten from the utility room area. Betty had went and got a towel to wrap the swimsuit in. Candy said when she came back, she handed me the towel. I put my hand on Betty's shoulder and I said, "I'm so sorry." And Betty grabbed that axe again, and the confrontation was on. She had swung it upwards, hit me in the head, and Candy had a cut on her head. She swung it down, sliced her toe, and the fight was on. And I killed her. Then she walks over to the bathroom. She gets in, takes a shower, leaves, and goes about the rest of her day. Now, let's just stop and think about that for a moment. She kills her friend with 41 hatchet axe wounds. And I did this last night because I was thinking about the case. 41 is just a number, right? Think about 41. Count them out. Pretend that you're swinging a 3-foot axe in limited space in a utility room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're not even halfway there. Now, it would be easy for me to say rage, right? That's what everybody said back then. Whoever did this, it was rage and it was personal. It turned out, more than likely, that was the truth. So sometimes it does match. But it very well, if it wasn't Candy Montgomery, think back maybe to the Valeska, what was it? Valeska axe murders. It doesn't always have to be personal or rage induced. Could be someone with first time ever killing with an axe or killing in general. Or they have a mental issue and they don't even know the person. So it can't be personal. And they're not angry with the person. They never met them. But maybe that person reminds them of somebody else. Whatever it is, they don't know what it takes to actually kill somebody. That one blow could do it. So there's many reasons to have number of stab wounds, and rage and person being knowing the person intimately doesn't always play into it, and you can't tell. But here, that's exactly what happened. And I think that it's important to think about those stab wounds, axe wounds. So I always get the question, how do you become a cold case detective? Ken Mains, how did you become a cold case detective? Well, I had that in mind a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And I got the answer right here. Mastering Cold Case Investigations, a guidebook for detectives. I wrote this 550-page behemoth for that purpose. Because when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then when I became a detective, I wanted to know more about cold cases, why they go cold, why are they unsolved, is it evidence, is it lack of determination, is it perseverance, is it politics, all the above. Well, I set the answer to all those questions in my new book. It's been 10 years of research, writing, jotting down things. I knew that I was going to write this book eventually, and it finally has come to a head where I'm able to actually get it done, get it published by Unsolved No More Publishing, and get it out to you. So who's this book for? It's for detectives. It's for amateur detectives. It's for college students, academia, forensics. The topics I cover in this book, from what is a cold case, victimology, research, crime scene location, criminal profiling, conflict, greed, sex and revenge, possibilities versus probabilities. That is huge in this book. I go through that a lot because that's the basis and foundation of my methodology. Evidence, sketches. Of course, you have affirmations. Why should you listen? Social media, the rule of psychology, equivocal deaths, modus operandi, signature. Legal and ethical considerations in cold cases, integrity, involving as a cold case detective, serial killers, missing persons, domestic violence, exposing myths, premeditation versus spontaneous, confidential informants, wrongly convicted, clandestine graves, you name it. I cover it in here. 550-page hardcover textbook. And along with all those topics, I also wanted to do case studies, especially case studies on confessions. Why? Because you can learn so much from confessions. At the end of the book, I go in great detail about killers in general who have confessed, why they did it, and what we can learn. That's always the most important thing, what we can learn from them and move forward and apply what we learned on that case to a future case. So I have all that. I tried to incorporate as much as I could, and there's a lot in there about real life cases that I have worked on and I have either solved or learned something from. And I'll tie that to a specific chapter, along with tips, certain things that I think you should look for in certain areas. It's a great book to learn from, but it's not just for active law enforcement members, private investigators, defense attorneys. Everybody can learn from this book. And that is what is motivated me to write this, is I want people to learn. I am tired of seeing wrongfully convicted people. I'm tired of the politics of district attorneys' offices and state police and local jurisdictions who either don't have the resources to do it or they just pass it off because they don't know how, they don't want to, they don't have the desire, the determination. And all that does is affect the victims and the victims' families. And I see it time and time again. You will see endorsements and affirmations from victims' family members in here who I've worked with in the past because they are the most important people. To pass off what I have learned to you. So you can be a great investigator, you can be a great detective, and you can solve cases just like I do. Get your copy now. I'll sign it. I'll get it out to you and start learning. That way we can start solving cold cases together. She goes and takes the shower. She leaves, goes about her day. It isn't until a week later, that she tells nobody what she did. And then when she's caught, then all of a sudden it was self-defense. She is arrested, goes to trial. She takes the stand. She says everything that I just told you. I went over there to grab the swimsuit. She confronted me about the affair. I admitted it. She became irate. She got the axe, and we fought over it. Now, the controversy was that she went and seen a psychiatrist who put her under hypnosis. And I've dealt with cases where this has happened. And I won't say I'm not a big fan of it. If it helps, I'm all for it. But I haven't seen it help really in any of the cases that I've dealt with. But in this case, she stated to her psychiatrist that Betty shushed her. Shh. And that triggered something in Candy. to when she went back to when she was 4 years old. She was in the hospital. Her mom told her to shh because she didn't want to be embarrassed by all the crying for the people that were in the waiting room. And because of that, the psychiatrist says she snapped. Candy snapped. And that is the reason for the 41 rage-induced swings. Now, I don't know about all that, but apparently it was enough for the jury to acquit her. And she was found not guilty. And her husband moved out of town. They lasted for about 4 more years. They divorced. And Candy pretty much lived her life in obscurity, not seeking the spotlight. Jessica Biel, from what I read, reached out to her to consult for the Hulu series, and she said, I don't want any part of it. I researched and tried to find Candy Montgomery today, and I believe I did. It appears that she is a counselor. Everyone deserves a second chance for the most part, I believe. So just because, and I know this is going to be horrible to say, just because somebody killed somebody with an axe doesn't mean, number one, they're a bad person. Number two, that they don't deserve to go on and fulfill their dreams in life, especially since she was acquitted. And I think about Casey Anthony, and I don't feel the same way about her. And maybe that's because she killed her child and was acquitted. I don't know. But with Candy Montgomery, I want to look at the self-defense claims. Is she telling the truth? That's the crux of this. It's no longer a who's done it. It could have been. But she admitted it because the evidence would have found her certainly as the person responsible. So then it becomes why. And isn't it just fascinating that as a society, and it's the reason true crime, I think, is so big as a genre, is that as a society, we want to know why. Who and why. And when we find out the who, we have to know the why. And then when we find out the why, it's not good enough. And we have to start making excuses or disbeliefs. Now, that can't be the reason why. It's almost as if our brains never want to know the full truth. There's no fun in that, right? The fun is the imagination and trying to figure out why. So what you have to do in cases is figure out, okay, what does the evidence tell you? Well, you have the thumbprint in blood, okay? That is evidence, and that tells you more than likely that's the offender. Again, it's not 100%. Somebody could stumble upon the scene, but it's not the case here. Footprints. She was wearing sandals. That's the type of footprint that they found. I mean, it's her admittance. Okay? She admitted to it. So there's no longer a guesswork with all that stuff. The focus is on, should we believe her in her version of events? And that's what I want to get into. Should we believe Candy Montgomery, and why? Well, the first thing you have to do is look at her background. And I always say, if you want to know the truth about somebody, let's say you suspect somebody's lying and they're not a good person or they're putting up a fake front, go back to their high school. Don't talk to their friends now that they have around them. Sure, you're going to interview them and you'll glean good information from them. But go back. Talk to their high school teachers. Talk to their classmates. They'll tell you, oh, she was a loner. She was a liar. She lied all the time. You're not going to change those things from then till now. So that's where I go. Now, I didn't have the opportunity to do that. But the police, for the most part, seemed to do a really good job here. They contaminated the crime scene horribly. So thank goodness they got her to confess, or they would have had some more issues. I mean, she was already acquitted, but they would have had more issues than what they had. So, should we believe Candy? Well, I think you have to break down her story and couple her story with the evidence. And when you do that, I think it paints a very clear picture, for the most part, of what happened inside that house. The first thing that we can determine is that it is not premeditated. This is not a premeditated murder. Now, how do I know that? A couple of things. Number one, Candy tells everybody at this church function she is leaving to go to Betty Gore's house. If you're planning on murdering her, you're not telling anybody that you're going there. You're just saying you're leaving. Number two, it was during broad daylight. Now, unless you're the stupidest criminal in the world, you plan a little better, okay? The story of her picking up the swimsuit jived with what the daughter said. So that's the reason for Candy to be at the crime scene. It's legitimate. The weapon. The weapon also tells us something. It tells us, again, that it's not premeditated. Let me explain that. What is that weapon? In essence, it's a weapon of opportunity. She did not bring a weapon with her. How do we know that? Testimony of Alan Gore, Betty's husband, who says, "That's my axe." Where was your axe, sir? It's a very important question. It was in the garage. Okay. So now we can say, well, Candy Montgomery did not come to that house with an axe and kill Betty Gore. So now what is it? So her story is starting to make sense. She went over there for a legitimate reason to get the swimsuit, and now something happened. We don't know what it was, right? Candy could have went there, got angry, maybe for whatever reason. Saw a picture of Alan, her former lover, and Betty on the wall, and it angered her. She went out, grabbed the axe, came in, and whacked her to death 41 times. Yes, but that's not probable. Why? How would Candy know that an axe would be hanging in the garage? Maybe she didn't, but most of the times that's where men keep their tools. So it would be a good place to look if you're looking for a weapon. But you're in the house. What is the most obvious weapon of opportunity in a house? Kitchen knife. You're right there. You could grab something from there. So I think the location of the axe itself tells us something about the case. Again, that is not premeditated, and Candy has validity to her story that Betty introduced the axe. Something else that I believe gives credibility to Candy Montgomery's story, and that is Now, I'm not talking about the psychiatrist version, and that triggered a 30-year memory of her mom shushing her, and that's where the rage comes from. I'm not sure I believe that. But I do believe that it happened, meaning Betty shushed her. And I do believe that possibly could have set her off. Maybe not for the reasons the psychiatrist says. But why do I believe this? And what does it signify? Okay. When Candy's telling her version of events of what happened, why would she bring up, she shushed me? That is very particular. Could have said anything. Wouldn't it have been a better story to support self-defense if Candy Montgomery said, you know what? She called me a no good whore, and that she was going to go tell my husband and kids and right now. So I snapped. That's what a liar would say. But somebody's telling the truth. They're not going to make up a story about somebody. Because why? How would that come about? That is a truthful statement. Without a doubt. That happened. Now, why did it happen? That's what fascinates me. Okay? I know that it happened because she could have said anything, and she said that, and that doesn't help her cause. It does nothing. The psychiatrist later connected that and made that help her cause. Her just telling that in the story didn't help her. It didn't help her self-defense theory. So why did she say it? Because it's the truth. So why did it happen? Well, I think you could surmise or theorize that it was a loud argument. Louder by Candy. What would be the reason that Betty Gore would shush Candy Montgomery? The 1-year-old child in the crib trying to sleep. That's the reason. So I think that if Betty did confront her, whatever happened, whoever confronted who, remember we've established it's not premeditated, but that doesn't mean that something obviously happened in there where they argued. Who started that argument? We don't know. But I think we can deduce that Candy was the aggressor, at least verbally. She got loud with Betty, and Betty shushed her. Obviously, I disbelieve Candy's version that this happened after like some struggling with the axe or whatever, and then she got shushed. That doesn't make sense. It makes sense an argument or a verbal altercation was taking place where Betty was talking in a normal tone. Candy escalated it and got loud. And Betty shushed her. Hey, take it easy. I don't want to wake the child. So that kind of flips the script, doesn't it, of who the aggressor is. Remember, premeditation doesn't have to take place a week in advance or even a day. It could be a few minutes in advance. I plan on killing her. I'm not saying that happened here. But I am saying I believe, I can't say 100%. Somebody confronted somebody about the affair or whatever it was, and more than likely it was probably Betty. And Candy said, yep, it happened. They got into an argument. Candy, for some reason, began to get loud. And that could be the reason that Betty went and got an axe. But I have a hard time with that because she must have felt threatened if that was the case. You're going to remove yourself from this verbal argument and go grab a weapon, such as an axe. I believe that Betty did that. Why? Because Candy wouldn't have known it was there. Which brings up another piece of evidence, which was a popped out or broken sunglass lens that was Candy's, that was found in the garage. The Candy says she never went into the garage. Now, the garage is, it's important to know, the garage is attached to the utility room where the murder took place. And there's a door there. Candy says, I tried to leave at one point in time while we were struggling. The glass thing could have been kicked out there. Prosecution had a hard time with that. I do not. I think that is very possible, depending upon the location of where that was found. You know, if it's 100 feet from that door, then no, that's not possible. But if it's found on the outside of that doorway, then yes. I think it's very possible that that's the case. A lens getting popped out, that shows that there's conflict. There's an altercation taking place. Okay? So, I do believe that. But did Betty go and get that axe as an intimidation factor? What is more intimidating than an axe? I'm going to show you how much I love him and my family, and you bring it in as an intimidation thing. Not that you intend to use it to kill Candy Montgomery because she's having or had an affair with your husband. I mean, because if you want to kill her, right away, you're in a utility room. The kitchen is right there. You grab a knife. But instead, you grab the biggest weapon that you can, and that's an axe. So, I do believe that Betty introduced that weapon. And then, I mean, if I put myself in Candy Montgomery's shoes, I go over there, I'm already holding a secret. I've been holding against you, and it would have made me feel horrible. Sociopaths, they don't have that empathy. They don't care. Now, I'm not saying Candy Montgomery is a sociopath. I don't know. But if I went over there and I'm already holding lies, but I'm getting this swimsuit, and Betty asks me, did you have an affair with my husband? I saw how you guys flirt. There's been rumors, whatever it was. And if Candy wanted to get that off of her and say, yes, I did. And it feels so good to tell somebody that. And Betty probably already knew, but it was the confirmation of that drove her thinking, oh my God, you were my friend and you did this to me. Alan was my husband and he did this to me. How are the people going to look at me? I don't even know what to say. You get me so angry. And she goes out and gets this axe as an intimidation factor, saying, you know what, I am so angry with you, I could use this. And Candy's being like, listen, okay, I told you I was sorry, okay? There's no reason for this. And, you know, Candy now is becoming, it's hard to say the aggressor, but she is to the point where, hey, this is going sideways. This is not what I wanted. It's just happening. And now I regret saying that I did have an affair. She's taking this the wrong way. Listen, you're not going to intimidate me. Okay? I told you the truth. Now let me leave. And now you have the shh, because Candy's getting loud. And now it's on. Whichever one went first, who knows? Apparently, Candy got the best of her. 41 whacks. Self-defense. I can see it. Okay? In my opinion, I do not believe she went over there with the intention of killing her. And I don't, but to me, it's more of a mutual combat. And self-defense would play into a mutual combat situation. A lot of people will say, well, she should have just ran. Sure. Yes. She's in somebody else's home. They have a right to defend themselves. Whatever it is, you could run. But she didn't. For whatever reason. From the evidence that I've seen, I think, for the most part, Candy Montgomery is telling the truth. And I don't know if the jury got it right, because I felt and I feel that there should be some sort of charge there. Even if it's a mutual combat charge. 41. You hit her once in the head and it immobilizes her. You leave. You don't continue to swing that axe 40 more times. Even if you're angry that she did this to you. And to me, that's what it was. It wasn't a childhood repressed memory and her aggression came out. I don't believe that. It was more, there was rage there. I don't believe that she liked Betty, because it's not that she wanted Alan for herself. And again, this is just my opinion from the outside looking in. It's that Betty was the topic of conversation in the whole year that they were having this affair. Okay? It was almost like she was second best. Candy was second best in her mind. And then I told you the truth. You asked me whether I'm having an affair with your husband. I said no, but I did. And then you're going to try to intimidate me by bringing in this axe? I just told you the truth. I don't want him no more. And you have the audacity to bring in this axe, and you're going to raise it at me? No, you're not. And then there's a fight. And then it's rage. Because you have the audacity, you have the temerity to try to hurt me and try to intimidate me after I just told you that I wanted nothing to do with. That's where it comes from. That's the rage. Okay? And that's the 41 whacks. She should have been charged with something. She shouldn't have been able to get away scot-free and go live her life. Now, one of the things that I can say is that she avoids the spotlight. And for a lack of better terminology, I like that. She's not on TikTok, Facebook. She's not out doing things that would draw attention to her. I like that. Whether it's remorse, whether it's respect for the victim, whatever it is, I just like when somebody conducts themselves in that manner, especially after something cruel like this. And, you know, when a celebrity calls you and says, hey, can you help me with this? And she says, I don't want any part of it. That takes a lot of, I don't know what you call it, like willpower to say no. If Jessica Biel called me and said, hey, I want to know, yep, I'll be there. So, I mean, any celebrity calls me, and I've had a few that I went and met. They said, hey, we're fans of yours, which still is crazy. No, I'm fans of yours. And you want to meet? Yeah, yes. I'm on the next flight. If Axl Rose called me, I'd be there tomorrow. Okay? So, I mean, there's just certain, I guess, things that come with that, with being a true crime celebrity. Not me, and I'm not. I'm talking about Candy Montgomery. They have a show on Hulu, which I'm getting ready to watch tonight. I've already watched the one on Netflix, and there was one in 1990, I think, with Brian Dennehy, who also played John Wayne Gacy, if I'm not mistaken, but there was a show about that. So this story has been told numerous times because it's fascinating. Fascinating. Any woman that kills somebody with an axe is fascinating to the general public. I mean, think of Lizzie Borden and what's going to happen with Netflix coming out with the Monster series on Lizzie Borden. That's why I went to the Lizzie Borden house. Okay? I mean, I'm fascinated with it too. And I think it's just because you can't believe that a woman could do that. I can believe it. I've seen it. I've seen women do a lot of crazy things. But in general, in true crime, I think that people are just in broad daylight. You're going to go over and kill your church friend with an axe 41 times, and you're not even seeing her husband anymore. You did have an affair with her, but there's just so much to it that you can learn. And I'm fascinated by the case. I really am. And I'm glad I got to watch that. Again, I looked her up, and she's changed her last name. I believe she uses her maiden name. And it seems to me, and I don't know if I have the right one, but if she has her own webpage promoting her services, she seemed a little far out there, to be honest with you. But what a story. Love triangle. It goes back to, the first thing that you want to look for in a crime is conflict. Where is that conflict? And it took police a little bit to figure that out by finding out that, okay, Alan was having an affair. And I believe this is what tied it all together. Before she admitted to anything, Alan lying, Candy lying about the affair, and then Alan comes clean, and then Candy comes clean. So now you have two people. Now what do you have as an investigator? You have conflict. Whether you know it, whether it's perceived or people are seeing it, or whether it's internal, because of an affair, there's conflict there. They may have never gotten into a verbal altercation in their life. And then you couple that with Candy was the last person to see her. Boy, as a detective, you don't get a better lead than that. That's something you follow up on. And they did. Then you go right to Candy and you hammer her. Okay, well, tell me about this. You lied about this. That's a detective's dream scenario. You catch them in a lie, and then you go at them and you look. Hey, we don't have to venture off to greed, sex, revenge, all these things when we have conflict. There's conflict there. Let's deal with it. Let's vet that out. If we don't find anything, if that doesn't pan out, then we go to, okay, is the murder through greed? Was anything missing? Robbery of any sort? Sex. Was it a sexually committed crime? There's no indications of that. Revenge. Ooh, we have to stop there, right? Because that could be a potential motive. And in this case, I believe there was some truth to that. There was a seed planted there where she was angry. And I think it just caught her off guard more than likely when she confessed to the affair that Betty took it the way she did. And Candy didn't like it. Hey, I came clean to you. I told you the truth. And you're going to act like this? And now you're going to go out, you're bringing in an axe from the garage to try to intimidate me? Are you kidding? Lots of things that we can pick and poke at and say, I believe this, I don't believe that. But that's my assessment on this case. I'd love to know more about it. I feel so bad for the innocents, like I always do in this case. The kids. Candy Montgomery's kids. Betty Gore's kids. Alan, I don't know what to think about him. The TV show showed him basically having another affair. I guess you can't call it an affair. He's a widower. But during the trial, he started seeing and sleeping with the church organist. And then he gave up custody of the kids, I guess, or lost custody of the kids to Betty's parents. And he's been divorced and moved a couple of times. Hey, this probably had an effect on him. There's no doubt. But remember when I said him being out of town was a red flag? Listen, yes, it's a red flag because you got to think of, okay, he's hired somebody to do this. That's not the case here, but as an investigator, that's the first thing that you're going to think about. But then he starts, having sexual relations with other women rather quickly. And people want to judge for that. Just as like on the stand, they said the cop said, no, this wasn't on the stand. It was an interview that I watched. One of the police officers said Alan Gore's wasn't emotional at all. And he felt that was odd. And he said, if my wife was hacked up like that, I would have went crazy. Well, stop right there. Never, as an investigator, say what you would have done. Never even think it. Because everybody is different. I made that mistake early on crime scenes. I would stand at the doorway and I'd be like, all right, what would I do? Okay, I would have went this way first and went that way. And that's a mistake because you're not a criminal or you're not that person. You didn't have the environmental effects, the stress, whatever it is from just committing a crime or getting ready to commit a crime. So you can't think like that. You're not under those environmental pressures. So don't make that mistake. Darlie Routier with that silly string. I remember watching that when I was younger, thinking, oh, she's guilty, just based off of that. Number one, I didn't know the context of it all until I talked to Darley's sister. Number two, you don't know what's going on in somebody's head. In that silly string, you can't determine her guilt or innocence, or even if that was appropriate behavior or not. Are you the morality police? You can't say just because you wouldn't do it, it doesn't mean that it's not acceptable in different cultures or in different families. So you have to be careful not to make that mistake when you're investigating. Because Alan Gore didn't react the way you would have, that has no bearing on the evidence. Not even circumstantially. You can't even use that. It should enter out of your mind completely. You line up 100 different people, and their reactions are going to be different to said induced, problem. So that's one thing that you have to get out. He's lonely, whatever it is. He has divorced and married with the organist. I don't pay any mind to that. It's after the murder. It doesn't matter. He has an alibi. It doesn't matter. I'm not the morality police. But I feel bad for him and his kids. True crime, you have to be very careful. And it's my biggest gripe, I think, with true crime, is that now with YouTube and stuff, when people just, what's the word, dox? I think that's the correct terminology, that they just don't care. It's all about clicks and likes, and they're going to go and ambush people at their door and go to try to find out these kids, and there's got to be some humanity in true crime. If I had one thing to tell the true crime community, it would be that. Let's be decent. Okay? Remember, we're all human beings. Okay? They had something traumatic happen in their life. And it's not for you or I to capitalize off of that. If anything, we should be there with a helping hand and saying, can I do anything to help you? That's what decent human beings do. They don't take advantage of the situation. So that's my public service announcement for the true crime community today. Candy Montgomery, what a fascinating story. And I can't get enough. I want to learn more. So that's it. Hey, thanks for watching this video about Candy Montgomery in Wiley, Texas. Thanks for watching. Mains out.